and welcome back to an episode of Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Runtime HD, and this week, what we found off the shelf was...
He's enterprising, aggressive, young, bold, vicious. He'll do.
Stop it, please, I beg you! Food, all right? Great, sir, great. Try the wine.
Oh, it was gorgeousness and gorgeosity made flesh.
The 1971 masterpiece, A Clockwork Orange. This film is based on the 1962 book of the same name, written by Anthony Burgess, starring the ever-so-popular Malcolm McDowell. It is directed by one of my favorite directors of all time, and said to be one of the greatest directors of all time, Stanley Kubrick. It is a black comedy, dystopian, crime film, and let me say, this film is really, really good, right? And obviously, I really like Kubrick's films, but I'm going to say this, I am not, super... obviously, I just watched it, and I feel like there's a lot of things that I missed upon first viewing, because that's kind of how Kubrick films work. You kind of have to watch them a few times to really understand them a bit better, because they're very interesting, right? Because they're written in a way that kind of makes you want to rewatch them, because when you rewatch them, there are details that you were like, hey, I didn't notice that upon my first viewing, but now that you've seen the film all the way through, and you know what's going to happen, you notice these things, and that's kind of like the masterful thing about his films, is that they're rewatchable. They're very rewatchable, in my opinion, because you always get something new out of a rewatch, right? There's always, a little detail you might not notice. And that's what I feel about this film, because I think there might be a lot of commentary, there might be a lot of, really interesting things I could have missed, but I'm just going to give my opinions. I'm not going to try to get into the commentary, but I will get into it. But overall, I just really think this film is even though it's, fucked up and dark, it's also really ridiculous and weird, because, the scenes... Obviously, Alex DeLarge, the main character, is a terrible person, right? He's a bad guy. He does a lot of bad things that I probably can't say the name of on YouTube, but you guys, if you've seen Clockwork Orange, you know what I'm talking about. He is a bad person who does very bad things, and it's just not good, right? And of course, he goes to prison for it. And when he's in prison, he gets sent to this, treatment, this, rehabilitation center, and they do this treatment, which basically brainwashes him. I'm sure you've seen, the shot of him, with his eyes pried open, and they're, putting the eye drops in. I'm sure you've seen that before if you've never seen this film. But this film, after that happens, he's rehabilitated. They let him back out into the world, but everybody hates him. Right, because he's done a bunch of shitty things, and he gets kicked out of his house by his parents, pretty much. They replaced him with somebody else. He meets some old people that he fucked up before they're caused to prison. Some people he did wrong things to. They get their revenge on him. It's kind of the whole second half of the film is kind of just his comeuppance, right? I don't feel bad for him at all, because he had it coming. He's a terrible guy. But the thing that's kind of ironic is that, yes, he gets what's coming to him. Yes, a lot of terrible things happen to him because he did a lot of terrible things to people, so it's, karma. But by the end of the film, it's kind of all moot, because he eventually is bribed by the government, because obviously the rehabilitation is kind of people are, it's frowning, it's making the government look bad. Right? So the government is going up to him, and they're like, hey, we could be friends. And we could be like, hey, look, he's got a job in the government now. He's rehabilitated. He's good now. Right? They could do all that and kind of sway public opinion to favor the government. Right? Make them look better and not make them look as bad. And by the end of the film, it does imply that Alex is not rehabilitated in the slightest. He's still a sociopath at heart, and that will likely never change. Because they didn't fix him or cure him. They just made it so that he can't lash out. Physically cannot lash out. Right? He would if he could, but he can't. Right? And by the end of the film, it doesn't even matter because now he has a high-paying government job where he's protected by the government and nobody can really do anything anymore. So really, he wins. By the end of the movie, Alex wins because he got what he wanted. Pretty much. He can do what he wants, essentially. But I will say that this film was very thought-provoking. And it was very interesting, but it was also very fun. Because obviously the first half, as I said, is very ridiculous. Like, literally, there's a point in the movie where he's, fighting this woman with, a dick sculpture. And she's, trying to hit him with, a head bust. And he's, pushing her away with, a sculpture of a dick. It's pretty, and that, he kills her with a dick sculpture. That's you have to admit, that's pretty fucking ridiculous. It's pretty, I'd say it was pretty much a black comedy. I would say it is. And I love that. I love how ridiculous the film is. I like how kind of sporadic the first half is, kind of how it's just thing after thing after thing. Because then the second half is kind of the payoff if you were paying attention in the first half. Right? If you weren't just going through the motions, if you were actually paying attention to what was going on, the second half kind of rewards you for paying attention. And I like that. Right? I really like that the film awards you for actually watching it. And overall, it's just good. You know what I mean? It's a good film. What else can I say? It's very graphic, though. It's very graphic. Violent. There's a lot of naked women. Rape, lots of that bad stuff, right? And that's what the film's about, right? I think the film kind of needs that stuff to get its point across, and also, I feel like the plot wouldn't really be the same without the gratuitous violence and, all the terrible, nasty things that Alex does. It wouldn't have the same effect if it was just mildly bad things. It has to be bad things like that. And it's it's dystopian because of all the bad shit that happens, because of how normalized that shit is, and how little the government cares to do fucking anything about it. At the end of the movie, his two gang friends are cops. They are terrible people, and they're cops, right? And maybe that is a bit of a commentary on corruption, in the government and police. There's a lot of, themes and messages there, that's you gotta look into, right? And it's obviously, some of it isn't as subtle, but it's it's there, right? And it's, as I said, it's interesting. It's fun to look into, and it's just interesting to look at, right? It's just a very good movie. I don't know how much else I can say, but it is good. It is very good. The film was very thought-provoking, right? It was very interesting to watch, and it was very just... By the end of the film, it really makes you think about what you watched. It makes you look back at the things that happened, and it kind of makes you think, well, did any of that matter? Did any of the, judgment that Alex received at the end of the film by being tortured by his previous friends, by being tortured by his previous victims, did any of that matter? Because now, as I said, he has a job with the government, and they're going to pretty much cover all this up, essentially. And he's going to get paid a lot, so it doesn't even matter. And I like that, because it's not a good ending. And one thing I read about is that the original book, has a happy ending, where he's he gets better, and he's healthier, and he's not a sociopath anymore. It's no. That's stupid. And Stanley Kubrick back then said he didn't read that chapter because he read a different version of the book, but he said even after the fact, he's I don't like that. It's unrealistic, and it's bland. It's bland, happy ending that doesn't make sense. Because it doesn't. Why would Alex get better? There's no reason for him to get better because he didn't change as a person due to the treatment. He only got the treatment because he wanted to get out early, right? He didn't do the treatment because he wanted to get better. He's just trying to get out of prison, right? And he does, and he gets the treatment, but it just makes him unable to lash out. He wants to, but he can't. So he's not better at all. He's not fixed. He's not cured. He's just brainwashed, pretty much. He's been programmed to where he literally cannot. You know, it's like, it makes him sick. Like, literally, if he tries to do anything, like, sexually deviant, or if he tries to be violent, he will feel sick. He will feel terrible, right? And if he listens to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, he has a really big obsession with Ludwig van. He has a very, very big obsession with him. But if he hears the Ninth Symphony, because he heard the Ninth Symphony in, like, a concentration camp video, and he was horrified to see this use of Beethoven in such a horrific thing. It wasn't even the horrific thing that horrified him. It was the use of Beethoven in that video that horrified him. And he can never listen to the Ninth Symphony ever again. Ever the same. Can't ever listen to it the same. And then later on in the movie, they use that fact to, like, torture him, where he jumps out of a window, trying to kill himself, but it doesn't work. And eventually, he's, like, in the hospital with casts everywhere, like, casts all over his body. And then that's when the government approaches him to bribe him into working for them and to up their public image, like I said. And essentially, by the end of the movie, he becomes a part of the system that created him, which is kind of like a little bit of a full circle moment, right? It's a little cool. It's a nice little bow on the top of this very big, intricate present, if you could call it that. But, yeah. Very, very thought-provoking, very interesting. And honestly, I would recommend it. If you can handle, like, the taboo aspects of this film, lots of nudity, violence, just a lot of, as I said, taboo themes. If you can handle that and that doesn't affect you, I think you could definitely get a lot of enjoyment out of this film, and there's definitely a lot that it has to say that I probably didn't even touch on in this video. And overall, highly, highly recommend it. If you're a fan of films, if you're a fan of Kubrick, if you haven't seen this, which you probably already have if you're a fan of Kubrick, but if you haven't, absolutely watch it. If you're a fan of the book and you've never seen it, go watch it. And overall, highly, highly recommend it. And with that being said, I think I rated an 8.5 out of 10. Very, very enjoyable. Really liked it. Very thought-provoking. And, yeah, I think I was going to say, think of some in peace. So, guys, I hope you liked this video. Share with friends, subscribe, turn notifications on, comment down below how much you liked it. And I've been Running Time HD. Off to get the cure. Please, please stop it, I beg you! Yes, that's my Ludwig van Beethoven moment. Yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black, and yellow. Well, let's shake it up a little. I have no idea why I'm referencing the B movie in a Clockwork Orange review, but I guess that's what my life is now. It's shit, I already said that.